Well, welcome to the first ever 10:30 service. Now, I know you're good people, so let me say this. Just take a look around the room real quick. Just look around the room. Okay, there may be a moment, not predicting anything, but there may be a moment in the next few weeks where we are going to ask some of you to do the 11:45 thing, but not yet, okay? And so what you need to do is go out and get 200 people to fill up the 11:45, and then we'll just, I don't know what we'll do. But if you don't want to have to move to 11:45, just go get those 200, bring them in, fill your seat, pay them, whatever it takes. We think 11:45 will be fine, but wow, 10:30. Awesome. And 9:15 was quite a crowd as well, so this is great. Well, today is the first, and by the way, don't laugh when the 11 o'clockers come in just a minute. Okay, like don't laugh at them. And to be honest, you won't be able to tell like who just forgot or who's just always 30 minutes late to the service. Okay, they'll come in, and I told Tim, like, tell them, wait, just hold on. You're actually early for the 11:45. Just wait. We can add more chairs if we need to as the morning goes along, but this is awesome. So since we've begun 2014 as a church, we've been trying to imagine as a community what God might do in our midst this year, not just like in a selfish way, but what he might do in our epic community, what he might do in our city, and what he might do in our world. And we've anchored this series in these two verses from Ephesians chapter 3, 20 and 21, which say this: "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen." We've really tried to latch onto these two verses, just saying, God, would you do something in this community beyond what we're asking? But at the same time, don't miss this. Even though God can do more than we can ask, he still invites us to ask and to ask with all the imagination we can come up with. Again, not for our own selfish gain, but that he might be the one who gets recognition, the glory in that text. And the cool thing, again, is that he's willing to do a work in this community. And I think throughout history, what God's been willing to do is a work in any community that would say, hey, we want what you want for this place. We want what you want for this community. And he does it not according to our power, he does it according to his power. And so we want to lean into that this morning. And here's what I want us to imagine today. This is our main idea for today. Imagine a church where dynamic community becomes the norm. Imagine a church where dynamic community becomes the norm. Not that it's just a growing community, not that we're just hanging out and spending time together, but that it would be dynamic. It would be supernatural. It would be life-giving. It would be the kind of thing that makes everyone who is a part of its lives better. That's what we want to aim for this morning. Have you ever experienced a significant moment and you had no one to share it with? Now, there are times where we need to be by ourselves in our significant moments, right? There are times, okay? It's not like we want to be too codependent. But there are times where we experience significant moments and we have no one to share it with. Maybe you find yourself on top of a hill somewhere in the city. It's after work and the sun is just starting to set and you see a color in the sky that you didn't know existed. Now let's just be honest about the weather. I think we fall in two camps with this January weather. Okay, so I'm going to see which camp you're in. How many of you are in the camp like, I don't care what it means for the crops or my pastor's sinuses, it's been awesome. Others of you are like praying 30 minutes a day for rain. Anybody out there? It's been incredible, but maybe you're there, and the reality is in our day and time, you can text the picture to your friend, right? Not the same, doesn't do it justice as them being there. You can put it out on Instagram, right? And you can use a filter showing God you do better work than he does. You can do that, right? I mean, some of you are like, oh God, but I can make it better. I'll put a black box around it. I'll do the whatever it takes, right? But you can't you can't turn like so. For my family and I, we this is really cool. I've ridden a bike by myself to Sausalito, but this past Monday we did it together. It wasn't as fast, but it was more significant because I had people to share it with. And that's why I love friendships and on and on and on. But maybe you've been there and you got a call saying that you got a job that you thought they had already hired someone for and you knew you weren't qualified for and there was no one to share it with except for your current boss who can't know yet, right? I can't tell him. I can't tell her, right? And then you try to call people that always answer their phones and you realize they're on a 7-hour flight and they just started and you won't be able to tell them for a really long time. Because we want someone to share our significant moments with. But we also know that significant moments aren't always positive, are they? That moment when you happen to be all alone and mom or dad calls and lets you know that though you thought they've had a great 25-year marriage, they're telling you there will be no year 26. And there's no one to share that with. Significant, painful, no one to share it with. Or you're at the doctor, and the doctor lets you know that the test did not come back like you hoped, and the doctor hoped the test would come back, and you got no one sort of to share that with. Friends, you were not created to do life alone, but some of you are choosing it, and some of you will continue to choose it until you realize you can't do it alone. Not only were you not created to do life alone, you were created to belong to something beyond yourselves. And I can prove it right here. This is why romantic relationships are so significant. This is why close personal friendships are so significant. It's why those of you who aren't so self-absorbed love working on a team, okay? It's why the big idea of family, when it's done right, is something we all long for. And it's why, as we're talking about today, it's why dynamic community makes so much sense, because you weren't created to do it alone. You're created to belong to something beyond yourselves. Okay, and that's what I want to talk about today. Paul, who wrote much of, he lived in the first century, wrote much of the New Testament, but many people would kind of say that his best work was a letter that he wrote to the church in Rome. Everything's significant, but kind of the most robust letter he ever wrote, probably, on thoughts about God, what Jesus really means for us, how we live, how we should think, those kind of things, are found in a letter he wrote about AD 57 to the church in Rome. And what I want to do is look there at some elements that if they were to be present in our community, we would be the kind of dynamic community, I believe, that God had in mind when he led us to start this church almost 3 years ago. So if you have a Bible, Romans chapter 12, if you need one, just get a hand up and they will place one into your hands. And as you receive this Bible, we're on page 616. Just keep those hands up high. Romans 12. Page 616, if you have an Epic Bible. For the rest of us, Romans 12. We'll start in verse 9 in just a moment. Before we stand to hear this together, here's what I want to say. If you're new to Epic, we're so glad that you're here. We really have gone to the schedule to create space for people just like you. This is why we started the church in the beginning. It's why we try to plan. It's why the band was willing to come early. It's why they'll stay an hour later than they're used to today. It's because we want to make space for people to come into this kind of community, to understand what Jesus means, and to not be forced into something. So here's what I want to say. If you're new to the church thing, this particular church, or if you're just new to faith or the Jesus deal, or you don't believe at all, here's what I want you to know. Even if you're not there yet, you're not going to be pressured to get there today, okay? No pressure. But what I want you to do is, no matter where you're at on the spiritual continuum, I want every one of us in this room to think about what it would be like to belong to this kind of community, okay? Even before you believe everything we believe here, I just want us to process, myself included, what would it be like to be a participant and a recipient in this sort of community Paul gives us. So let's stand. Romans 12, starting in verse 9. We'll read through the end of the chapter in verse 21. And again, just ask yourself, could this be possible? Could we imagine it together? And what would it be like? Here's what he says. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink, for by so doing you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. You may be seated. We stand here at Epic to read the scriptures because we believe that there's power here. And can you imagine what it would be like to be a part of this sort of community? Here's what we're doing the rest of our 20 minutes or so. I want to give you about 13 things just straight from the text that are present in a dynamic community. I want to give you 3 what I think are massive obstacles to that becoming present in this church and in our lives. And then I want to give you the practical how-to of what we're aiming at and how we go about it with our environments here at Epic. Okay, so that's what I want to do. I want to give you like 13 things straight from the text. No, it's not going to, they won't each take 5 minutes, okay? Thankful for you. There's an 11:45 service we got to get to. 13 things. I want to give you 3 obstacles, and then I want to wrap it up by saying, hey, here's how we try to produce this, or at least increase the likelihood of this particular dynamic community thing happening within our church here. So let's just walk down the list. If you're a note taker, it'll come right from the text, but I may phrase it in a little bit different way. First is this: in a dynamic community, love is genuine. Love is genuine. Masks are left at home. Pretense is not there. We don't love people only when we can get something meaningful or positive from them. We love people, and we do so in a genuine way. The artificial stuff, it will never lead to dynamic community. Okay, and so we love in a genuine way. The second one is this: honor is shown to all. In a dynamic community, honor is shown to all. Any competitive types in the room? Any liars in the room? Okay, so there are a few of us that are competitive. Like, we just need something to win at. Well, here's what's great. God gives you permission and encourages you to win at something in verse 10. Check it out. When it comes to honoring people, he wants you to outdo everyone else. He wants you to win. If you look at verse 17, it says that do what is honorable in the sight of all. Honor is shown to all. And let's be honest, the reason I say this is a dynamic community and not just the norm when it comes to community is because every one of us we are in environments every single week, in church, in our jobs, at school maybe, whatever the case may be. And when certain people enter into that environment, they are shown honor because they're wealthy, because they have the experience, because they have a title. But when dynamic community is happening, honor is given to and from every single person within that community. It doesn't matter how cloudy your past is, you can still be honored. And you should honor everyone else. That's what he's saying. The third thing, going down the list here, the third thing is that commitment from everyone is wholehearted. Commitment from everyone is wholehearted. In verse 11, Paul says, do not be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit. The idea here is that don't do things, and I think this is true for every part of your life, your relationships, your job, your commitment to this faith community, whatever the case may be. Don't do anything half-hearted. Don't do anything half-heartedly. He's saying that they're passionate and they're committed to one another. They're not committed when it's convenient. It isn't a take it or leave it community. This is a dynamic, supernatural community that's life-giving, and it can only be done that way when everyone who's a part of the community isn't just half-heartedly into it, but wholeheartedly committed to the people that they're in relationship with. So everyone is committed in a wholehearted way. The fourth one is this: everyone serves together in this kind of community. Everyone serves together, no matter what your thoughts are about Jesus as far as him being God or Messiah or King or whatever the case may be. If you were to examine his life, just his public life for about 3 years when he was in his 30s, the one thing, no matter what your thoughts were about him being the Savior of the world, the one thing you would come away with going, man, that guy was a servant. No matter what your other thoughts were, and there's lots of other thoughts I have about Jesus, but no matter what your other thoughts were, you go, wow, he's claiming to be God, and yet he served everyone. He served even until the point of death. He was always serving, and so if we're going to be, as we say around here, a church orienting all of life around Jesus, then servanthood is going to have to be a significant piece of that. It's why in our Epic groups, every single group has a service, event, partnership, organization that they're working with every single session of groups. We want to serve together if it's a dynamic community. As you get into verse 12, the next idea is that hope is tangible. Hope is tangible. Here's what a dynamic community is. A dynamic community certainly enjoys the good times, but they don't give up when times are hard. Say it again. A dynamic community isn't just there when all is well, when the circumstances are favorable, when the bank account's full, when the job is awesome, when the relationships are strong. A dynamic community is there even when those things aren't present. It says that they rejoice in hope. The idea is that no matter what the struggle is, no matter what the suffering is, no matter what the circumstances are, we come together and say, you know what? There's a better day coming because we believe God has promised us that, and we want to make sure you know we're in this with you until things get better. I've been a part of enough things that were great as long as every circumstance was rosy. You? I've been in enough friendships. I've been in enough churches. I've been in enough communities that as long as everything is good, as long as I've got my mask on, I'm letting you know that I have got this thing together, all is well. But all of a sudden, when we begin to start being honest with each other, or when things aren't what every one of us in the group wished it was, it's like the group sort of dissipates. Dynamic community doesn't happen that way. It doesn't. It's not like a pessimist, okay? That's not what I want us to be. But it realizes in reality, things are going to be tough at times, and we're not going to give up when things are tough. Hope is tangible. The end of verse 12, here's this idea, prayer is a constant. Paul says to them, be constant in prayer. Throughout this text, what we're seeing a lot of is what we're to do for and with each other, how we're to get along. But a dynamic community knows that there is only so much we humans can do for each other. Okay? And we don't just go, well, I guess that's the best we can do and sort of exit. We go, you know what? We can't do this. There's a significant number of things that only God can make happen. So we bring our hearts together and we ask God to show up and to do what we cannot do. Prayer is a constant in a dynamic community. We're recognizing that the things we're after, what we're pursuing, those really aren't man-made things. And so if they aren't man-made things, we need God to jump in, to get involved. And we believe prayer is simple. It's just that simple way for us to communicate with God and invite him into our community. Mark your calendars. Wednesday, February 5th is our next night of prayer and worship right here in this room, 7 o'clock. And I want you to be here if it's at all possible for you to be here. You will not be asked to pray out loud, okay? You can write a prayer out and Tim can say it for you if you want to. But you won't even be asked to do that. But if you can get down here Wednesday at 7 o'clock, not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, that would really be awesome as we just bring our hearts together and go, God, would you do what only you can do? Would your power be at work? God, would you do beyond what we ask, beyond what we imagine? And here's what's cool. For the first time ever, many of you we know can't get down here, right? Maybe your kids are sleeping. Maybe you just can't get down here. Maybe you're on a business trip or a trip for fun. For the first time ever, we are going to live stream this event, which is going to be awesome. So if you have access to the internet, you're on a business trip, for the first time ever, 7 o'clock Pacific time, we are going to live stream the event. Now, the backup plan is we'll record something ahead of time in case this doesn't work, and it'll say live on it, and you'll have to trust us. But we're going to invite you just to participate, kind of hear what's going on, hear what's and how cool would it be to just know that maybe even in other countries and around the U.S. and in various parts of the city, we're coming together, as many of us can be physically present, but everyone else being able to kind of log on and be a part of that experience. So prayer is constant in a dynamic community. The next thing is we take care of each other's needs. We take care of each other's needs in a dynamic community. In sort of a take it or leave it community, we pretend that we don't have needs, right? Or that if someone else has needs, we'll pray for you, right? And that's good. But God's commissioned us to take care of each other's needs. Verse 13, it says, contribute to the needs of the saints. In a dynamic community, the first place we look to have our needs met and to meet the needs of others is within that community. Right? That's what God's commissioned us to do. We don't just have our own stuff just so we get to use our own stuff. God's given us stuff so that we can share with those who are in need. And what I'll say in just a little bit later on when we get to the obstacles, a dynamic community also is a community in which everyone recognizes they have need. Let me say it again. Everyone recognizes they have need. But Ben, I'm a millionaire. Money's done everything for you. But Ben, you don't understand where my degrees come from. I'm smarter than everyone else in the group. I don't need any. Listen, every single person in this room and that's ever existed, the way God's made you is that you're needy. Like it or not. You are. I am. We are. But the beautiful thing is that you've got stuff I don't have, and God's given me some things that you don't have. And so when we come together, there's this beautiful exchange. Beautiful exchange. At the end of verse 13, he gives us the next one, which is hospitality is offered in a dynamic community. Hospitality is offered. We welcome people into our homes, into our relational networks, into our churches, into our small groups. The idea with hospitality is this: we're welcoming people into our physical spaces, our spiritual spaces, our social spaces. And then Paul goes on, verse 15, he says this, rejoice with those who rejoice. Sometimes I just think we don't celebrate enough. We're always moving on, right? But Ben, there's always so much more. There is. But let's take days. Let's take moments. That's why on February 16th, when we celebrate Epic's 3rd birthday, cupcakes for everyone. If that's not your thing, bring a carrot stick or... I like carrot sticks. And I would choose a carrot stick if there wasn't the option of the cupcake. Celebrate well with each other, though, seriously. And the converse is true. Weep with those who weep. It's not a dynamic community if you only have people who are there for you when everything is great, as we said earlier. Weep with those who weep. When's the last time you sympathized with someone? When's the last time you sat with someone, even when you didn't have magic words? When's the last time that you entered into someone's struggle and someone's suffering? That's the idea here. So you get into verse 16, he says, live in harmony with one another. So we live in harmony together. Harmony is a big deal. It's this idea that comes across in verse 18, the idea of peace. Verse 18 says that as far as it depends on you, basically live at peace with all. Can you imagine what it would be like to be a part of a community where every one of us were aiming for peace? If that's true, then we're never looking to one-up each other. If that's true, then we're never looking to hold a grudge. And here's the deal. If peace is our aim, forgiveness will have to become our habit. Let me give it to you again. If peace is our aim as a community, forgiveness will have to become a habit. Because when some people think, oh, it's a great community, they think, oh, there's never any problems. Listen, we're all different, aren't we? And you're wrong sometimes. Right? And so we go, God, we're going to aim for peace. And we know that if we're aiming for peace, everything's not going to be awesome all the time. So we're going to make forgiveness our habit. As verse 16 goes on, he says, do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Here's what I want to say about that. No one is more significant than anyone else. No one is more significant than anyone else. I love the diversity in our church. Sometimes I get letters or emails like, Ben, you guys focus too much on families. Ben, you guys focus too much on singles. Ben, blah, blah, blah. I think that means hopefully some things are going well. We're going to take care of you, but we're not just going to take care of just your thing, okay? We're not just going to take care of your group. Here's what I want you to do so that we know that, listen, no one is more significant than anyone else. Here's what I want you to say. Repeat after me if you're willing to. I am a gift to this community. But I am not the gift to this community. Thank you. You're significant. You're just not most significant. I'm serious. You see what he says? You associate with other people. You're not the thing. I'm not the thing. It's not, listen, you're significant, I'm significant, and we are a gift to the community, but we're not the gift. We're not. And the 13th one I want to give you flows out of the rest of verse 16 where it says, do not be wise in your own eyes. In a dynamic community, humility shows up more than pride does. Humility shows up more than pride does. Just so you know how I think about leadership, I would rather put a humble leader without tons of knowledge into leadership than I would a person who knows more of the Bible than I do but is very prideful. And not because I'm jealous that they know more, just because they're prideful. Humility shows up more than pride does in a dynamic community. It says, do not be wise in your own eyes. Now let me give you the 3 obstacles to us making this reality or God making this reality among us. Here's the first obstacle. You can't remain anonymous. Now, hear me really clear on this. We've created, especially the Sunday environment at Epic, for you to remain anonymous as long as you want to. You just can't have dynamic community and stay anonymous. You can keep coming. Some people have come into this church for 2 years. We don't know your names. Lindsay asked you to fill out a card. We try to put our nicest person on stage to do that, and you're like, nope, still not doing it. So we don't even know who you are. And that's your thing. We're not going to pressure you. We can't contact you. You've made that obvious. But if you want to be a part of a dynamic community, we need to know you. You need to know us. I know you've been scarred and burned before, but you need to, at some point in time, be willing to open up little by little. You need to be vulnerable. Otherwise, you won't be able to enjoy dynamic community. You can enjoy music and a message, and you can do that a lot of other places. But you won't be able to have dynamic community. That's the first obstacle. Second obstacle is to know this isn't just a bunch of us getting together and hanging out, period. A lot of social stuff happens in community, but our vision is to be a community centered around Jesus himself. You can certainly belong before you believe all the things that we're about here at Epic, but I want you to know that because here's one, the Jesus piece is so big for me. You're probably better than I am, but those 13 things I can't live out unless my heart is transformed. You probably have it down. Like, no, Ben, I can do this on my own. Not for me. Not for me. I need a heart transformation. I believe Jesus has done that in my heart. I believe he can do it for your heart. We're not just a random community. We're a community centering around Jesus. And the third one, and this is a huge one, if you're going to be a part of a dynamic community, you must be a giver and a receiver of things from the community. You cannot be so needy that you have nothing to offer. You cannot be so self-reliable that there's nothing you need. I don't care how spiritual you are, how smart you are, how rich you are. I don't care how needy you are, how unemployed you are, how dark your past is. I don't care about any of those things. If you're going to be a part of it, now, I'm not saying it's 50-50. I do not believe that. But everyone, me, you, everyone in between, we have to have something we need from the community. And we must be able to express that no matter how self-reliable we think we are, and no matter how needy we are, there's something that we can give. That's the only way dynamic community works. Let's set those obstacles aside. Let's become known by one another. Secondly, let's realize that this isn't just some club. It's like we believe that Jesus has called this community into existence, and that he'll lead us on as we follow him. And then third, let's realize no matter how needy or how much you have it together, if you're super needy, there's something for you to give. If there's a sense of self-reliance in your life, self-sufficiency, there's still some things that you need. And this is the way God set it up. He's given me stuff that you need. He's given you stuff that I need. It's just true. And here's practically how we live this out here at Epic. Our Epic groups, as Lindsay said a second ago, really it's our environment. It's our environment to make what we've just talked about more likely. We don't believe that a structure or a program or an environment makes what we just said happen. We do not believe that. But it is our best attempt to try to structure something. Really, here's why we do this. Groups is a formal thing that we structure so that more of the fun, even better, informal stuff is likely to happen. Groups are awesome, but the stuff that goes beyond groups, the relationships that go beyond it, the social times that go beyond it, the serving that goes beyond groups. And so, as Lindsay already did, I want to invite you, just as I close my time out, to look back at this, and let me say a few things about our Epic groups. As we seek to become a dynamic community, we think this is a big piece of it. We don't want to waste your time. We don't want to waste our time. We have a staff person who oversees this whole thing. We're not wasting her salary. This is huge, and we believe that it's so significant. So there's tons of groups, and most of the groups happen on weeknights. They're open groups, meaning they discuss, or meaning that it doesn't matter what your gender is, what your age, where you're from, what your industry is, blah, 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 whatever. They're mostly open, happen on weeknights, and discuss the teaching from Sunday. But we have several groups we have more niche groups than we've ever had as our church has grown, as leadership has grown, as we've seen needs. We've been able to offer some niche groups. So I want to tell you about a few that I think could really be important if you fit into the said categories. The first one is this. For those of you that just kind of want to make it a 2-for-1 deal on Sundays, we will have small groups that meet right after this service and right after the 11:45, okay? So just feed the meter. You don't have to come back during the week if you can't get to wherever you need to be for our group stuff. Just do the Sunday thing. There's two hours right after this service, right after the second service, which is great. For those of you that are exploring faith, Jesus, Christianity, church, whatever, Will Marazzo on our staff is doing a group called An Introduction to Christianity on Wednesday nights. Fantastic. I know there's already 4 or 5 people signed up, which is awesome. But this is a great way for you to explore your faith. Will knows a lot. He'll tell you he doesn't know when you ask questions that he doesn't know. That's going on. For the first time ever, we have a group for those who are married but don't have children. They will be discussing love and respect. It's basically a DVD curriculum, and lots of people already signed up for that, which is awesome. We're doing a family night group on Fridays. We realize that families are difficult for families that have young kids to get together during the week, so Friday night's available. If you're a lady and you want to be with other ladies only, for whatever reason, we have 2 all-women's groups that meet. If you're Mandarin speaking or know someone who is, we have a Mandarin speaking group on Wednesday nights going through the book of Genesis. Our staff on Wednesdays at lunch will lead a spiritual leadership group based on a book around that title on Wednesdays at lunch. We have that going on. Thursday nights, it's going to be probably the biggest group, so we've got several subgroups, but Thursday nights, for those of you, for those of us in our 20s or young 30s, just over 30, like 6.5 years ago, but I'm young 30. I feel young. But Thursday night is going to be huge. I'm anticipating 50 to 60 people, if not more, will sign up for the Thursday night group. You guys will have a social space to enjoy here together, and then you'll break up into smaller groups. So in your 20s, low 30s, whatever that means, I want to encourage you, sign up for that group if you don't have another one that makes sense based on your stage of life or whatever the case may be. And invite your friends. They don't have to come to Sunday mornings for them to be able to enjoy getting to know other people in a real safe environment on Thursday night. So that's available. We have a moms group that meets Tuesdays at 10. That really blew up last last fall, 15 to 18 moms. So many opportunities for you to be a part of what's going on here. But let's just bring it back in. Can you imagine what it would be like to be a part of this kind of community? Let's be honest, many of us in this room doubt that's even possible. What would that be like? Needs met. Peace is the aim. Prayer is constant. Hospitality offered. Celebrate together, mourn together. What would that be like? If I said to you this morning, do you want to be a part of this? My guess is, I know for me, I think all of us would go, absolutely. Well, here's a little bit of the trick. If we're going to be a part of a group like this, I believe God's calling us to follow him and become together co-creators of this kind of community. You can't enter in unless you're bringing the things, or at least seeking to bring the things. My prayer is that God would go so far beyond our imagination and make us the kind of community that we've just described. Would you guys pray that with me? And if you're new around here, this isn't a guarantee from the pastor, but absolutely it is our aim. We're going to follow hard after this that we've talked about this morning. Let's pray, and then our band will lead us in a response song as we contemplate what it looks like to follow Jesus and experience dynamic community. God, I thank you because you are full of grace. God, I thank you that you've not created us to live life alone. God, you've not even created us to live life just with you. God, you tell us how to live with one another over and over again in the scriptures. And I pray that we become that kind of people, that kind of church, that kind of community. Jesus, make these things possible. We love you. We sit underneath the weight of your grace and love and mercy and your purpose for us. God, may we leave the isolated life and enter into the life with you, which by nature is communal with each other. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's stand. Let's receive.